So can we talk about Odyssey Stories? Because that, I think, hands down, is one of my favourite projects that I've worked on with you guys.
Yeah, ours too. It was so good.
It was so fun. So maybe I should just give a bit of background about it. So Odyssey Stories is a community storytelling project that I set up with my friend and co-collaborator Alex Glennie. And we came up with this idea that it would be really powerful and impactful to share stories in transport locations, so in tube stations. And that was when we approached you guys and said, would you help us to help this work come alive, to be able to share these stories? And so I remember one of the first things that you did, Jazz, was to produce the logo for Odyssey Stories, and it was just fantastic. It was just so beautifully illustrated what it was that we were trying to get at with the project, which was the way that our stories intertwine and overlap and connect with one another. And you produced this beautiful rainbow logo that really helped to capture that, and that sort of circular motion of stories kind of going on, and it was just beautiful, and we loved it. And then we went on to collaborate with Oval Tube Station and with TfL to be able to produce a set of stories which are still there now, which are in Oval Station.
As posters.
Yeah. And it would be lovely to hear from you what it was like working on that project, because I think it was quite a tricky brief to be able to distill. And again, it was that sort of say less thing. It was like, how do you produce content that can just be on a poster, that can be in a tube station and catch people's eye and give them enough to be able to tell them about the story, but not be too much. And I thought that the way that you guys worked on the illustration was just absolutely spectacular. So I'd love to hear what it was like from your side, because it was such a great piece of work to work on.
Yeah. Jess, you want to start with that one?
Well, I think part of the briefing process you had been talking about also in tube stations, the advertising spaces. And so we were keen that this is going to look different and stand out. And then you went through a series of interviews, right, with these amazing individuals in the community, and representing those people in a way that feels right for them can be a really hard thing to do. Putting people under the pressure of photography is sometimes not what they want. So illustration was perfect for this.
Yeah, it's softer. And you got their permission. You got them to give us a photo of themselves they were happy with. Sometimes you took a photo. And that meant that it didn't really matter what quality the photo was or anything. We just needed a representation, and we were able to do these beautiful sort of pencil and wash illustrations that become a story. If you an illustration, it looks like a story as opposed to reportage or a photo is much more definite, isn't it? It's much more sort of defined. Whereas an illustration is something that people can look at and stop, and they recognize it as a story, and they'll give it time and to read, because it's an illustration.
It definitely draws you in, doesn't it? And I think when you walk through a tube station, as you said, Jazz, there's so much advertising, and often advertising uses glossy photographs and images, and what we really didn't want is for it to look like it was advertising, and instead to get away from a feeling of sort of consumerism, and instead to be feeling like you were a citizen, and that these were stories and illustrations of local people and their stories. And it just managed to capture that so beautifully.
And that was a wonderful project to be part of, because we all know, standing in a tube station, what we're sold to, and often it's insurance and what have you. But so it was wonderful to sort of be a break in that. And I think, you know, part of the reason you behind the whole project was for us to acknowledge or break down barriers between people who are strangers although they see each other so often every day and they're cheek by jowl. And it was a way of sort of remembering that we're all getting on with our lives from all different backgrounds, and we've all got stories behind us.
Yeah.
And once you know that about somebody, you warm to them, don't you?
Yeah, and it was a real passion project for both Alex and me, because we wanted to produce a project that helped to do exactly what you just described, to help to show how people can live well together, and where integration and integration can sort of happen well in local communities, and to be able to give people the opportunity to tell their own story in their own words. And I think the illustration was just a really powerful way of doing that.
Yeah. And another point about that project was really interesting, because we went to Oval Station quite a lot, didn't we? Met with the station master and managers and all that. They talked about how the behaviour of people, of the commuters, and they've Oval as a station anyway do quite a lot to. They were famous for their thought of the day, weren't they, on the whiteboard? And just humanising the experience of going to Oval. And they talked about the practicalities, the benefits of that in terms of crowd control, the level of, you know, how maybe violence, or if something's, you know, aggravation on the ticket barrier, for instance, that kind of thing. Yeah,
they have classical music playing, and it creates a really kind of warm and welcoming space, and lots of plants, and a book exchange and things like that. So we were playing into that with these stories and illustrations that were helping to humanise the experience of being in that.
And did you identify Oval Station yourselves?
Very much because of that, because of what you described, that the way that it created that very welcoming space was what we wanted to sort of develop with Odyssey Stories. A
wonderful part about the project was we had to illustrate, I can't remember how many, there were about 12 people.
Yeah.
And along with your stories that you extracted from them, we drew them, and by the time we'd created these illustrations and put them on the website, we created a lovely little website, we felt like we knew them.
Yeah.
And then we had a wonderful event. Maybe you could talk about that, because it was just such a warm, wonderful event where we got to meet everybody that we illustrated, and we kind of knew their story already, so we were able to sort of talk to them very easily. People from all walks of life. Maybe you could talk about that.
It was, I mean, the storytellers were just fantastic, and they absolutely loved it, I think, to be able to come into that space. So we had the launch in Oval Tube Station. I remember you guys turning up with everybody's illustration all rolled up, the little ribbon around it, and handed it out to each of the storytellers, which they loved, which I thought was just such a kind and generous touch, and something that I think they really enjoyed. That launch, I think, was a celebration of community, of the stories of people from, as you say, all walks of life. You know, Mr. Hamilton, who was 103, and
Mr. Hamilton was so good.
And people from the community, local school teacher, and a young student, and a whole mix of different people. And then our tagline was "All that we share," and that was something that we wanted to try to get across in this project, was that we all come from different sort of walks of life, and yet there are often fundamental things that we share. And in that instance, every single storyteller either lived or worked in Oval. And so that was the commonality. And I think the illustrations that you produced and the way that you so carefully curated the design helped to bring those stories to life. And it was a real pleasure and a really powerful piece of work. I really enjoyed working with you guys.
And now the Odyssey Stories project is going to live on, isn't it?
So Odyssey Stories is now living at the Social Change Agency, which is really exciting, and they're hoping to take the work forward. So I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah, and perhaps it could be rolled out across other stations or other similar kind of opportunities.
Yeah, we hope so.
Wonderful, really powerful piece of work, a wonderful project to be part of. and we were really happy to get on board because it was kind of very much kind of, we went at it sort of equally in a way and I'm glad it's through all the work that you do, and you've educated us into how powerful this kind of work is, and what it means to communities. I mean, we saw the pride on each of those people's faces. They were the superstars, weren't they? And they were so humble and gracious with it. It was so wonderful.
But I want to thank you both too for your extreme patience in the process of iterating it, and that was one of the things that was so lovely about working with you, was the trust that we have in entrusting these stories, which it felt very precious and something that's very important to be able to give that, represent that person well, exactly, honour their story, represent them well, and I think everybody who was a part of the project really enjoyed being a part of it. So
and it was a lot of hard work. Now we stand and look back, it looks like it's kind of arrived. But it's a lot of hard work. Your initiative, your drive to do this piece of work in the first place, you and Alex, and then asking us to sort of partner with you, really, to sort of make this happen.
And it really was, like, it felt like a partnership. And when we were all there at the launch, we were all, in it together. It's great. Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
No.